Following today's headlines, from Colorado, we have a story about an increase in food stamp holders. From Florida, we have a story about unfair working conditions in Immokalee field workers. And all about fracking. Is it a good thing for the environment, or does it just cause more carbon emissions? Hello, welcome to Rio USA, the show that gives you an inside look into the reality of the melting pot that this country is. I'm Maria Lourdes Palais, reporting from downtown Washington, D.C. Has there been an economic recovery in this country? Hundreds of thousands in the state of Colorado do not think so. Since the beginning of 2008, the amount of people that actually live on food stamps has increased to 500,000. Mary McCarthy has a story.
Despite frigid temperatures outside, there's a constant stream of people who've come here to get free food.
It has gotten harder. Things are more expensive. I pay more with electricity right now. So it's kind of an up and down between paying electricity and getting enough groceries.
For dinner?
We're going to have chicken and rice.
Mary Lovato, like many Denver residents, simply couldn't afford to feed her family without the free supplies she picks up at this food bank.
Groceries are so expensive, there's things I can't afford, and I get milk and bread. I get meat at times, and it really helps us every week.
Greg Pratt says many of the people here receive food stamps, but that even with that government assistance, they still need extra help from charities like his, especially since the federal government reduced the food stamp budget last fall.
We see a lot of working families, those who are sort of getting back into the work field, but it's still not enough to get back on their feet, and they still need to come to a food bank to supplement the food for their household.
To qualify for food stamps, your income must be at or below the federal income poverty level. That's under $12,000 US annually for an individual and under $24,000 for a family of four. The number of Colorado residents enrolled in the food stamp program spiked just after the 2008 recession began and never returned to pre-recession levels.
So we see that the folks that we serve are really the first to get hit by the recession, as well as the last to recover from this recession. So in other words, typically they lose their jobs early, and they are some of the latter folks to actually get jobs back or gain employment again as the recession is recovering.
The nonprofit organization Hunger Free Colorado has launched this photo exhibit about hunger, trying to spread the word that even working and middle-class people sometimes can't afford their grocery bills.
It's really just you and I. It is folks that have been operating on a razor-thin budget, and one radiator can blow or one health bill, and they're tipped over into needing this additional assistance.
Victoria, who says she hasn't been able to find work in 10 years, receives food stamps and other food assistance.
For me, hunger is something I deal with, and not having enough food or good food to eat on a regular basis every day. It's just become normal now.
Officials and charities in Colorado say they see many people caught in a cycle of coming on and off food stamps and other food assistance. These are people who are sometimes able to find a job or increase their income, but for whom long-term economic security remains out of reach. Mary McCarthy for Telesur, Denver.
In July 2013, we showed you how unfair working conditions in the tomato fields of Immokalee, Florida, affect the lives of thousands of workers there. The situation has not changed. Aisa Garcia shows us how the market rules ignore the fate of these workers.
These men are workers in Immokalee. They belong to a sector of a population that has been historically disenfranchised in the state of Florida. Now they're urgently looking to enjoy decent labor conditions.
Nuestro trabajo es duro y no nos quejamos por lo duro que sea. Lo que sí nos quejamos son por ese tipo de abusos. Eso es lo que nosotros no toleramos más.
Wilson is a laborer who opposes that supermarket chains such as Publix and Wendy's still buy tomatoes at the lower price of the market, regardless of how farm workers are treated.
Estamos buscando, es como un centavo más por libra de tomate que nosotros buscamos. Pero pues también hay un supermercado que como se está negando de firmar el acuerdo, que es Publix, y hemos llevado, bueno, ya perdí la cuenta de tantos años llevamos de la lucha, pero pues queremos que él venga a la mesa con nosotros, la mesa del diálogo con la coalición de trabajadores de Immokalee.
The workers have indicated that this is the only way that decades of several abuses could come to an end: low salaries, discrimination, aggressions, and also sexual harassment.
Hay compañeras mujeres que han sufrido como acosadas por sus patrones, por sus supervisores, y han sido despedidas por reportar lo que ellos quieren, que no sale a la luz, pero las mujeres que hablan, los que salen a la luz, de una vez los despiden. Pero esperamos eliminar todo eso.
In order to eliminate that, they require that a percentage of Florida farmers, public supermarkets, and Wendy's restaurants, among other multinational corporations that buy tomatoes, can join the Fair Food Program. Since 2005, the Workers' Coalition has sat at a table and signed direct agreements with 12 multinationals, which include McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, Subway, and more recently, Walmart. Achieving that Walmart accepted the food program has made them have more hope in keeping their struggle.
La necesidad de justicia es importante. La necesidad de que otros se unan a este esfuerzo sigue siendo una verdad a nuestro alrededor.
Esas corporaciones están sacando ganancia gracias al trabajo tan duro que realiza la gente en las labores de tomate del estado y por toda la costa. Y ellos están creando la pobreza por la manera en que usan su poder de compra para dictar el precio.
They have refused to live here under the very same conditions that made them leave their countries of origin and whose governments have signed trade agreements that have had negative impacts on farm workers.
El Tratado de Libre Comercio básicamente lo que ha hecho es empobrecer a nuestros países. Muchos de los que estamos aquí somos hijos del Tratado de Libre Comercio. Fuimos expulsados de nuestro país exactamente a las políticas económicas que se implementaron con el Tratado de Libre Comercio.
And they're taking their message to other cities where the same supermarkets and fast food restaurants operate and don't offer opportunities to have better working conditions and better wages.
Aiza García, Telesur, Immokalee, Florida.
It's time for us to take our first break. Next, Real USA will show you how inaccessible housing is for some. Reporting from San Jose, California, Rachel Silverman shows us how, as the technological boom fuels exploding housing prices, the elderly, the working poor, and the handicapped stay priced out of the market.
They come together once a month in the clubhouse of the mobile home park where they live to play Bunko, a game with 3 dice and a whole lot of luck. Mostly low income and all senior citizens, they're afraid their luck has run out.
I don't know where I'd go. I don't know what I would do. I was told that they would destroy my house.
Jean Cardiff and more than 150 other senior citizens who live here are facing eviction from the homes where they'd planned to live out their final years.
I have no idea where I would go. I don't even like to think about it.
The owners of this seniors-only mobile home park have given notice that they want to sell the land underneath these homes. With property prices booming, developers want to replace the mobile homes with market-rate condominiums. Dave Johnson is president of the Winchester Mobile Home Park Homeowners Association.
We have a lot of people in this park that if they get displaced from here who have no family, and they have an income that is letting them eke by here, and if they get tossed out of this place, they have no place to go accept the street, or the city's going to have to take care of them.
Johnson and the other senior residents here are getting organized, making videos, writing letters, contacting local politicians, and trying to work out a deal.
We're trying to intercede and buy the property instead of Pulte Homes, and that's going to require coming up with funding.
Board member Davelyn Jones is 79 and still works part-time as a technical writer.
I helped to produce Silicon Valley. I'm one of the people that worked in it for 40 years, and I want to retire here.
Kent and Ruth Greathouse, 75 and 69, were public school teachers.
If this group of homes is destroyed, it's not just individual lives, but they are actually destroying an entire community here.
The older people, the low-wage earners, the families who are struggling, they get lost.
The Greathouses and a handful of other residents recently attended a city council meeting where they waited 3 hours and were given 1 minute to speak. San Jose Housing Director Leslie Corsilia also attended the meeting. She says if the sale goes through, it will exacerbate the city's already chronic shortage of affordable housing.
We're going to have more and more seniors that we need to house, and more seniors living longer and on fixed incomes. So the problem is going to get greater. We need more state leadership. We need more federal leadership. Right now, local governments are left to handle this themselves and without the tools that are needed to do this.
A lawyer for the park owners says by law, residents would have to be paid fair market value for their homes and given 2 years rent support. Some properties may be able to be moved elsewhere, though space is limited. This senior citizens mobile home park is just one of a dozen in the city of San Jose alone. Several similar parks in nearby cities have already been sold to developers. As the tech boom drives up land values and America's aging population explodes, seniors on fixed incomes are looking at increasingly uncertain futures. Rachel Silverman for Telesur in San Jose, California.
We move on from San Jose to San Francisco, where housing is almost unthinkable for most because of the astronomical prices, which have driven people to find creative solutions to conventional housing. Let's see what Rebecca Bowering has found.
"23-year-old Genevieve Angle lives on water. A receptionist at a fertility clinic in San Francisco, she makes the short commute across the bay from this marina in Alameda. That's where she set up home aboard a 32-foot powerboat. It has a kitchen, toilet, 2 bedrooms, even central heating. Genevieve loves living here despite the chilly winters, but it's a lifestyle choice she made for financial reasons.
I wanted to live in San Francisco, but it's too expensive, and in reality everywhere is too expensive. So my dad convinced me to buy a boat, sell it in a couple years when I don't want it anymore, and then I'll practically break even.
Genevieve owns her boat outright and says the monthly cost of living savings are huge.
I pay about $400 for the slip fees and for my water and utilities. I figure if I was living in a 1-bedroom place in San Francisco, I'm not going to get it in a decent part of town for less than $1,500.
In some San Francisco neighborhoods, the cost of renting an apartment has doubled over the last year. Plenty of young professionals, especially in the tech industry, earn a respectable wage, but they're increasingly choosing to opt out of paying large sums to landlords. Blogger Tynan is one such vehicle dweller. He lives in an RV or mobile home. But he asked us not to film the outside. In a city where parking's a daily nightmare, he's afraid of being evicted from his spot.
If you park in a really nice neighborhood and people see your RV and they see that you're kind of flouting convention, you're not paying for rent in this place where they're paying a lot of money, they do get upset, and so they'll call the police. I've had the police move me probably 6 or 8 times.
Tynan's micro-closet houses 2 shirts and a pair of trousers. He says blogging about his Spartan life has encouraged dozens of followers to live in similar RVs, although it's not technically legal. An influx of tech workers has ramped up pressure on San Francisco's housing stock, and urban planning experts say lower and middle-class residents are being priced out.
As these millionaires and multimillionaires come to the city, it can be just enormously disruptive to the fabric because people end up having to go if they don't already own or aren't in a stable housing situation.
Another problem is that during the recession, San Francisco barely built any new homes. Now there are belatedly about 6,000 units under construction, and the city's become a leader in the provision of affordable housing.
With every new unit of market rate housing that's constructed, developers need to either pay a fee to construct affordable housing, or they need to build below market rate units within their buildings themselves.
So far, demand for this kind of low-income housing is far outstripping supply. But San Francisco city leaders hope that in time they will be able to close the housing affordability gap before too many long-standing residents have been forced to move away. Rebecca Bowering, Telesur, San Francisco.
Nutrition and housing, two environmental issues in real USA. When we come back, fracking and the Keystone Pipeline oil project. Perforation technique everybody's talking about called fracking. Will it make the US energy independent, or will it just cause more carbon emissions? The thing that it will do for sure is allow oil companies to dig in deeper into the soil. But is it good for the environment? Mary McCarthy has a story from Denver.
Jenny Markarian is a working mother with 2 children, and she was one of the leaders behind a citizen push for a 5-year moratorium on fracking in the Denver suburb of Broomfield.
This victory feels amazing. So many people in Broomfield came together and worked so hard and gave up so much of their time to make this possible. And for now, we are reveling in this victory.
It's a victory they just barely won. In Broomfield, the fracking ban passed by just 20 votes.
We learned that there were going to be several fracked wells very close to where we live and very close to the school that's in our neighborhood where my children attend personally. So this was something that would really affect our community, our way of life, our property values, and our health.
Broomfield is one of 6 cities in this picturesque spot north of Denver that have now passed bans on fracking. Wells like this are drilled, then fluid is injected into them to break apart or fracture underground rock and release oil or natural gas. Opponents say the fluid contains chemicals that are toxic to humans, and that the drilling and injection process dramatically increases carbon emissions in the area. One reason the fracking debate is so heated is that the science for now is inconclusive. Some scientific studies support the activists' claims that fracking does contaminate groundwater and raise overall pollution levels. But other serious studies say the effects on the environment and public health are negligible. Industry representatives in Colorado say that fracking doesn't pose any greater risks than traditional forms of drilling.
The word fracking is really a synonym for oil and gas development, and so we have to be sensitive that people are concerned about an industrial process coming into their community.
Tisha Schuler says she fully understands why residents are concerned, but at the same time, her organization is suing to overturn the fracking bans. She says that it's the responsibility of the state and not citizens to regulate natural resources.
It's blatantly irresponsible. We all use oil and gas. It's the cornerstone for our economy, the cornerstone for our way of life, and it's really key to how we get to work, keep our houses warm, do all of our work and all of our electronics. Everything we do has oil and gas as its foundation. So the idea that I want all of this as part of my way of life, but I want someone else to produce the energy required, this is just something that's not tenable.
Meanwhile, the citizen pushback against fracking is not going away, and activists from across the U.S. are turning to Colorado for inspiration on how to launch anti-fracking initiatives.
Definitely felt a national interest. I think that Broomfield is a swing county, and I think it could have went either way, and a lot of people were watching what's going on here in Colorado.
Across the U.S., an estimated 400 cities have passed bans on fracking, and France has banned it entirely over concerns that it causes environmental damage. Mary McCarthy for Telesur, Denver.
We'll continue with the issue of the exploitation of natural resources in the U.S. The Keystone Pipeline oil project is a case in point. It would go from Canada to Texas. Environmentalists are complaining that if approved, Obama would not be keeping one of his campaign promises. Mike Miller reports from Houston.
The proposed extension of the Keystone XL pipeline from Western Canada to the refineries along the Gulf of Mexico has caused considerable debate among environmentalists. Environmentalists took to the streets of Washington in the hundreds to make their outrage known. Meanwhile, the Democratic-led United States Senate has already pledged its support for the project. Now it's in the hands of President Barack Obama, who's expected to make a decision sometime during the summer. President Obama has voiced his support in the past for green energy projects. A vote for the pipeline extension would be a step in the opposite direction and anger environmentalists. Although the majority of Americans are in favor of the extension of the Keystone Pipeline, according to a recent poll, Democrats, on the other hand, are still divided. Many liberals are concerned with the potential of oil spills caused by leaks in the pipeline. Environmentalists say heavy crude from the tar sands of Western Canada is more prone to corrode pipes that would carry the oil 1,700 miles to Texas refineries along the Gulf of Mexico. Protesters have been very vocal about their disapproval since the announcement of the extension several years ago. Large numbers have rallied throughout the United States, hoping to get the attention of President Obama. They're accusing him of double standards, saying he'll invest in green projects, but favoring the interests of oil companies to create what will be one of the largest oil-carrying pipelines in the world. And campaigners are concerned that the president's actions could damage the environment.
If you don't have a healthy environment, you're not going to have a healthy body. You're not going to produce a healthy future generation. We're poisoning ourselves. All for money? Money isn't going to buy you health. Well, if you're rich, yes it does.
Despite these claims by protesters, analysts say the pipeline extension is the safest way to move oil from Canada to Texas.
It's just a lot more efficient, and it's better for the environment if we do it by pipe. You know, if we don't produce Canadian oil, we may find ourselves producing oil from coal, and oil from coal is about 3 times more, has a higher pollutants than oil from Saudi or Texas fields. It's not that dirty, and we need it, and the alternatives are a lot worse.
Environmentalists have certainly made their voices heard, but the fight is not yet over, and campaigners argue if Obama says yes to the pipeline, he will be contradicting his position on green issues and breaking his promises. Mike Miller for Telesur, Houston.
And that will be all for today from Real USA. Don't forget to send us your comments and suggestions to our email and our Twitter. I am Maria Lourdes Palé reporting from Washington, D.C.